Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me? Oh. We are so happy to have you here tonight. This is, in many ways, the official start of the Mill Valley Film Festival. And we could not be prouder. We can't even imagine, how we could be prouder than showing Dear Evan Hansen. It is a spectacular film. It was a spectacular Broadway show, and we're so fortunate to have with us the director and a member of the cast. I want to just say a little bit about the Mill Valley Film Festival and this film in relation to it. In many respects, I think this is the perfect film to really be kicking off the Mill Valley Film Festival. We've all been through difficult times, and there's certainly many things ahead of us that we have to be careful with, but a film that deals with real subjects and has an amazing, amazing soundtrack, because it's more than a soundtrack. It's a musical, it's a drama, it's funny, and we are so happy to have it here as what we like to call part of the Mill Valley Film Festival Contenders season, the kickoff for it. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you for supporting us over the last year and a half or more. We could not have done this without you. So here we are, back in the theater. We have the director with us, who I'm going to introduce in a moment, Steven Chbosky. You may recall his film, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, which he not only wrote the screenplay and he directed it, but it's from his own original work, his own original book. He directed Wonder, a spectacular film as well. And he has assembled, along with Ben Platt, who will be here later, the star of the film, the most amazing cast, and I am just so excited to be sharing this with you. So please welcome Steven to the stage.
Thank you, Mark. Absolutely. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it very much. And thank you all, folks, for being here. Thank you for whoever did the woo-woo for Perks of Being a Wallflower. I really appreciate that. It's funny that you mentioned Perks. I started when I did the movie, all of the press, it all started in San Francisco. I don't know. My very first interview was conducted. I was asked questions by an obscure politician named Gavin Newsom. It was really kind of remarkable. He's done quite well for himself since then. But I have to say, in terms of to echo what you said, it has been a very difficult time. We all know it. You have your version of the last year and a half. I have my own. Everybody in the cast has theirs. And we made this movie before the vaccines. I remember, actually, it was, I think our first day of shooting was a year ago today. Yeah, I think it was today. A remarkable experience. Something I want to share just in a personal sense, because it has to do with us all being here. I remember, whenever you make a film, you go on location, and usually when you go on location, there's a lot of camaraderie that happens, where you go out to eat, or you go to a bar, or you do this, or whatever it is. You kind of become like a little traveling circus, and you become very, very close. Because of the COVID and the protocols, and because we could not possibly jeopardize the production, what happened was we didn't do any of that. We basically sat alone in our houses, in our apartments, or hotel rooms, if that's where people were staying, for, in my case, 4 months. And the only time we ever gathered was to work on the film. So it was a very, very difficult time. I was away from my family. A lot of us were, and you couldn't actually see them. Literally couldn't. There's no visits. There's nothing. So it was a very, very trying time. At the same time, when we actually got to set, the only time we saw human faces was when the cameras were rolling, because the actors would take down the masks and the visors would go down, and the entire crew was masked up, and we just did it. And what happened was the silver lining that came out of this, the hunger for connection, the passion that the actors brought, and this magical thing that happened, this alchemy that happened with this amazing group of people that you're about to see perform. I will never forget it as long as I live. And I have to say, now that, and it's very, very, it's a big honor to be part of the kind of the welcome back. To see people gathered is remarkable. To see this kind of marking this, the resurgence of the movie in theaters is the most remarkable thing that I could ever hope for. I've loved movies for my entire life. It is my lifelong passion. And so I just want to say thank you. It's such an honor to be here. What a beautiful place. What a lovely crowd. And I just really hope deeply that you, should I say that we're going to do a Q&A after? Yes?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I cannot wait. So anyway, just thank you and welcome. And I hope you enjoy this production of Dear Evan Hansen. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage Stephen Chbosky, the director of Dear Evan Hansen, and also the star, Ben Platt. Welcome.
Thank you.
This is
Thank you.
such a fantastic film, and I want to also say hi to the other members of our audience that are in the other two theaters.
Oh, hello, other two theaters.
And just congratulate you for making this incredibly entertaining, moving, and important film. Don't get me wrong, I love Oklahoma, Carousel, West Side Story. I dance to it, I sing to it, but privately. And but this is a whole other animal. The combination of dramatic, musical, and the attention to detail in this fabulous cast is just amazing. I just have to congratulate you all for doing this. I want to go back a few years because I was just kind of poking around the internet. Not that something, I don't spend all my time doing that. I want you to know that. But I saw that you were on Stephen Colbert, and this was during the height of the play, before you were already nominated. And you went out there, and the first thing you said was, something like, "Thank you for bringing me here during these crazy, crazy times." And I'm going, "Oh yeah, COVID, shelter in place." I'm going, "Well, no, this was before that."
Yeah.
And it reminded me how crazy things were and how crazier they got and how important this film is for this time, that this film really is about this time. And I'm just kind of curious, I don't want to start off too heavy, but I'm so curious about how much do you think the pandemic has made to both of you, meant to both of you in terms of the film. I know the film was likely in your mind for a long time, but what influence, unconscious or conscious, even in retrospect, do you think that had to deal with it? And I know, and it would certainly be great to talk about how you made this film during the pandemic, but I wonder if you two could comment on that.
Well, as I said when I introduced the film, we were sequestered in Atlanta, Georgia for about 4 months. And, I know that Ben was able to live with Caitlin, which was great. So he had like some company, which is wonderful. But otherwise, we just couldn't mix. And I cannot tell you, it was just so interesting to here's this wonderful city, here's this wonderful place. You can't really go out in it, and just to be there, like, you know, your house was basically, it was like house arrest. And then we were like released to work, and then we would go back. So it was just very, very, it was like a lot of, like, you know, dumplings and CNN, you know, because there was also an election going on. So yeah, it was quite an interesting time, and I'll never forget it. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, sort of in terms of the material, I felt very much with my creative team and everyone who did the musical how very current the piece felt when we put it up on stage. I think it was something very immediate about it, and something about the story felt really important and immediate and sort of specific to the time. And so one of the things of many that I worried about in terms of thinking about making a film was, will it feel as prescient, or will it feel as important, and will it match the time quite as well? And then, unfortunately, for all of us, it seems to be more important than ever. I think that isolation and loneliness and hunger for human connection is now entirely synonymous. Like, I think there's not a single person on the planet that doesn't feel that now. So I think it still has all of the kind of intergenerational conversations that the musical had, and speaks to youth in the way that the musical did, I think. But in terms of every individual human being, there's something even more unifying right now about the story that I think is kind of weirdly universe intervention meant to be, that this is when we put the film together.
Yeah, very well put. Thank you. And it does seem both so current and timeless at the same time. And that's because we're all human beings and we're a flawed species, and we have social media too to compound everything. Just one more thing about that show with Stephen Colbert, because I know you told an interesting story, a couple of interesting stories, but one of them was, and I'm sure we'd all like to know, how do you sing so beautifully, talk and cry, just physiologically, at the same time?
It's been asked of me many times over the years, and I think if we're going to talk in a literal sense, it's all about, you know, fluids and mucus, not to get gross, but, you know, it's about when do you have time to let those things pass, and then where's the space to resonate. The weird thing that I love to sort of bring to light for people is that actually when you cry, when you're sort of draining all of this stuff, you create a lot of space, like resonating space up in your sinuses and passages, because everything is falling out and down. So it's actually not the worst time to belt. But in terms of like the bigger picture, I think for me that's what's so special about this piece. As you were saying, it's not Oklahoma, it's not Carousel, it's something that's very, very close to the ground, and all of the music is sort of direct connection to the scene and is only forwarding narrative and emotion, and is never there to be a beautiful production number or to lift out of the reality. It's purely to move the story forward. And so to do a role like this on stage where you had to kind of reach that emotional place every night, it was a beautiful cushion and sort of, you know, whatever the nice version of a crutch is, to have that gorgeous score to rely on, because so much of that emotion and that reaching that place is accomplished by the beautiful strings and the melody and the score, it kind of lifting you there. So I love the combo of the singing and the emotion.
And you didn't sneeze on anyone during the production or anything?
Many times.
Oh.
Yeah. Lots of spit on audience members. Bad for COVID, unfortunately.
I want to talk a lot about the team, you know, and a lot of the original team was certainly involved in the film, and that really shows that kind of heart that this film and the continuity. But of course, there's a lot of things that have changed to make a film. We know that. Anytime you make an adaptation, whether it's a novel to film or a play or anything of that nature, you can't fit a 300-page novel into a 90-minute or even a 2-hour movie. And of course, along with that becomes the second part of this unbelievable cast. But could you start off maybe a little bit talking about combination of what we brought up at first, the changes that happened. Obviously, we're all a little older, right? Children. We've changed, all these different variables of time and place. But tell us about the team and some of the process that went from taking it to the Broadway stage to on this movie screen?
Well, yeah, for me, I felt like when I came on board, I was jumping onto a pretty fast-moving train already. They had, at this stage, I know that Ben had done 600 or 700 performances of it at this point. The three authors, they had seen many, many incarnations, touring companies, et cetera, and they'd learned a lot. And so when I came on board, I felt that it was my role to ask questions, and just to offer a fresh perspective. But I revere authors, and so I wasn't there to put some kind of imprint on it. It was more to ask, like, hey, what if we didn't start here? What if it was a lot of what ifs? And then what would happen would be the three authors, two producers, myself, and then later Ben would give a lot of input as well. We just kept turning over stones, and it wasn't very precious. It wasn't like, there's a lot of great songs in the Broadway show. For example, Does Anybody Have a Map, which is the original opening number. I love that song. It's a beautiful song. But there were a lot of things what we realized was like, hey, what would happen if you took it out? Then we'd have like an hour-long discussion. Oh, if you take that out, then it'll all be from Evan's point of view. Oh, that's interesting. Then we'll meet everybody through his eyes. Oh, that brings us closer to him. Okay, that's probably a good decision. Or something else where on stage, I don't know how many folks have seen it on stage. Show of hands. Okay. Oh yeah, a lot. Great. Well, so then the part which I love on stage, brilliantly directed by Michael Greif, who's a real hero of mine. Where Evan is talking to Connor, but it's kind of like more Evan's alter ego, and so he's talking to himself through Connor. Well, on stage is brilliant because the stage is abstract. Film, a real bedroom, it feels like, is he a ghost? What is that? It didn't quite fit for all of us, not just me, like everybody. And so we said, okay, that goes away, but with that, now you're losing the song Disappear, which is so important to further the story along. So what's that going to be replaced by? And then what we kept looking for when we made changes, it wasn't like arbitrary. It was like we were looking for the win-win. All right, if you take out Disappear, then let's replace it with something. Oh, you know what? Alana doesn't have a song. We have Amanda Stenberg. She's a songwriter as well. And then suddenly Alana's character got more developed. And so that changed. It was all these little changes. And then because there was less Connor here, with the alter ego thing gone, there's room for, now that you guys have seen it, this new song and this beautiful new song, and the reveal that it was him that sang it, and also gives Evan's character a chance to find out more about Connor. So it was all that stuff. It was very organic, a lot of discussion based. And look, Pasek and Paul are incredible songwriters, and Steven Levenson, I think, is the unsung hero of everything. He's such a great writer. I cannot tell you. As a fellow screenwriter, I just bow to him. He's so talented.
Yeah, and I remember reading something that Steven said that at first I guess he was being precious. He didn't feel he could change things a lot. I mean, he said, well, I'm the writer. I can do that.
Yeah, and then it was like, don't change that much. It's actually really good.
That's enough.
Once they tasted blood, sometimes it was my job, like, no, as a fan of the show, like, no, slow down. It's good. This part's great. You don't have to change the scene. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it was like, going out to a restaurant or movies. You got to get a little bit used to it now, But yeah, tell us, I know the composers worked on La La Land as well, and they came up with new songs for Alana and yourself as well too. Is that
Connor has a new one at the
Connor
end.
had one,
I wish it was mine. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it was beautiful, and Connor was really developed, even though he's not a tremendous amount of screen time, but you really got a sense of him, and that's what you're saying. That was more just coming through you on the stage.
Yeah, I feel that one thing was really exciting for us when I cast Colton to play Connor. Colton Ryan, who plays Connor, he was the first person other than Ben, literally, to play Evan on Broadway. Was it Broadway or second stage?
Broadway, yeah, he was my standby on Broadway.
Yeah, and so he knew the show intimately. He played all the characters. He played Jared. He played Connor. He played Evan on stage, and so he's such a terrific actor that it was very easy to give him more and more. The one thing I knew going into this was once, and this was what was so exciting, because I love stage musicals so much, but I knew that I was like, once you put a close-up on this mother's grief, once you put a close-up on that, things would you would have to make adjustments emotionally to like be able to, I guess, have as much there's only so much emotion you can ask of an audience. And once you go close, it becomes more real, and then everything had to be adjusted accordingly. What was really remarkable was watching Ben adjust his performance, because I'd never seen Ben play it on stage ever. So to me, it was like opening night every day. That Colbert story that you're talking about, I saw it 10 feet away, and I couldn't believe it. So it was a really remarkable experience for me as a director, just to watch this, as a musical theater fan, to watch it happen like 10 feet away and to be paid for it was pretty fantastic. You know what I mean?
So Ben, how did you feel like during certainly the opening sequence and song? That was really in your head at the time when it was a stage play, and now you were singing in real time with hundreds of people around you in the gymnasium and et cetera. How did that feel to you? Was it feel natural?
It felt very satisfying, I think, because I had lived with Evan for such a long time, and in the musical there are so many images and kind of actualized versions of the story and what's happening that I would have in my mind, in the back of my head, as we did the show. So obviously in the show there are 8 characters and no one else on the stage in the Broadway version, and the school is imagined, and the spaces are sort of abstractly represented with projections and little pieces of furniture. But to be in the real school with all these kids and feel that isolation and feel that separation for real, or to be in the dining room across from Amy Adams and Danny Pino and Caitlin Deaver and have to really sing to them and create this lie looking right at them and see how it's affecting Amy and how much it's healing her and how much joy she's getting from it, and to be in my bedroom all by myself singing Waving Through a Window and have that be fully my own private moment. I think it was just really exciting and satisfying for a character that I had kind of lived with for such a long time and who I care so deeply about, to get to see what he's like fully realized on the earth, in these real settings. I think was sort of a natural finish line, like kind of a final exorcism of the character in a very positive way.
And I understand that obviously you were very close with this incredible cast, the younger actors and the veteran actors. It just seemed like a perfect chemistry there. You can feel it, and it almost feels. When I speak to a lot of people about their experiences remembering a film, sometimes it's more just about the experience when they're making it. But this, it feels like both. You're feeling that there was the chemistry there, and I know there's probably some great stories. You shared a house with Caitlin as well, and watched TV and had your meals together in isolation, and then when you have scenes like when you're confessing. And that was shot in multiple locations, that they were very generous with you as when you were singing it. Could you tell us about that moment when you were singing in their house and they were there?
Absolutely. Firstly, to what you said about Caitlin. Caitlin, I mean, apart from being extraordinary in the film, which I knew from the get that she would be, and we all knew that she would be, but she was really my saving grace in a very isolated experience. As Steven said, we all went home to our private lives and then only were at work, and it was a very, it took a lot of some of the joy and some of the camaraderie out of a usual filmmaking experience. And so to have Caitlin every night to, as you said, watch TV, specifically Love Island UK with, and, order food and just feel that familial warmth and get to hug somebody. And that's the only thing that made it doable, other than being able to speak to my boyfriend on the phone. But anyways, so I, as you were saying, when I sang Words Fail, which is the confession song, the first half of it in the dining room, Steven was very generous with me consistently in terms of when there was a big kind of set piece coming or a big piece of performance from Evan. He would come to me days before, weeks before even, and ask, what can I do to make that day happen for you? What do you need in terms of your performance? Would you like to be the first thing up? Do you want to do a wide first? Do you want to wait and see what everyone else does and then do yours? Very much allowing me to emotionally make it happen whatever way I needed, which is really rare for a director, especially for a rather large production where a lot of other dominoes will fall if I ask for a certain thing. So I did ask for on that day to jump right into my coverage of the song of the confession so that I could kind of wake up in the right mind space, do the warm up, and then jump right in. And so the price of that was that my fellow actors, Amy and Caitlin and Danny, who are also giving a very important performance in that scene where they're receiving this climactic information, which is a shattering information. And they had to do it off camera for like 5 hours at the beginning of the day while I did my half of it. And I knew that they would be very generous off camera because they're great actors and great people, but the extent to which that they lived fully in the reality of the moment and gave fully sort of weeping, entirely emotionally realized performances on every take of mine as I sang to them and as I saw them understand what had happened and start to, you know, their hearts started to break because they realized that this was all fabricated. And so to live in that reality over and over again while we're still hours from getting it on film and having to pick yourself up and do it, you know, for the actual film. After all of that, it's one of the most generous gifts I've ever been given of any kind. That's probably my most favorite memory of the whole process is that day. And as painful and as difficult as that performance was, it was just paid forward to me again and again and again in every take. And so I've, you know, cried as much as I could, and then when my coverage was over, I was like, oh, phew, that's done. And then I looked at them and just started crying again because I was like, and I went over and hugged them all because I was like, this is, you don't understand what a gift you've just given me. This, anything that happened or ended up happening that Steven put, you know, cobbled together finally, it was because of what they gave me. So that was very special.
That was an amazing gift. And Steven, you too, it was a gift, your partnership with Ben in terms of as a director. I know you love the written word and you love actors and music. But that was not only generous, it was very smart.
It's remarkable. You know, to me, I love this cast so much. This young man is a brilliant, brilliant artist and a fine, fine person. And to witness it, because, you know, and he won't tell this half, but I'll tell the other half, which was when it was their turn to fight and emote and listen, like, we could have done the pre-recorded, we could have just played some take, whatever. He kept singing for them to get them there, even though I know it was tough. I mean, that's a very emotional thing to sing. And you know, I could show you dailies where what you're watching them react to is him. It's not when it was time to flip it, he was there 100%. It's also really a really remarkable thing because like when I'm watching, I'm listening to it being mixed, like in real time. Because what you guys saw here, I would say like 95% of that is live singing. When you see him sing "Words Fail" at the end of the dining room table, that's him singing. You know, we're not lip syncing. This was real, unless, you know, like the extras are, you know, stomping through certain things. But even then, we would do wild takes just to be able to. I wanted it to be as real as possible. Anyway, to watch it. And to watch the generosity between all of them. But also, one of the things that's really wonderful about being a director is I almost feel like, and not to downplay whatever my contribution may or may not have been, I love artists so much. I love actors so much. And I consider it an honor to just do whatever I can. I will twist myself into knots trying to figure out, basically, how can I help? How can whether the help is to be supportive or to be kind or to whatever it is. I don't even know what it is, but like I remember one time Danny Pino said to me, which is a huge compliment, he's like, I see you directing everybody, and it's like you're trying to be everybody at the same time, like to be all 8 characters, you know, and some of the others. And so that was great fun, and I have to say, in this remarkable way, because as I said before, I'd never seen Ben perform it on stage. I'd seen the Tony performance on television. So, and of course the soundtrack was remarkable. So I would listen to it and I would, you know, do my shot listing and I would do my visualizations there. But I have to say, you know, in this remarkable way, I still don't know how you do it. And I'm not, and this isn't like nice compliment time. He actually doesn't like compliments very much. I still don't know how he did it, you know? And I would just try to figure out, you know, sometimes to just knowing that for him, that to go from 1,000 seats, like if you're singing something and suddenly you're turning to 1,000 people and you're emoting this way, to try to figure out, and we would have so many discussions about this. Okay, there's no 1,000 people, there's no front row, there's no back row, there's just Amy, but sometimes it's just you in a hallway. So is this a thought in your head? What is it? It was all those discussions I found really fun as a musical theater nerd, you know, to like work with the best, like him and the authors was really remarkable, yeah. I can't say enough about this young man. I really can't.
Well, one of the biggest changes would seem to be just what you would think would be is going from a 2-act stage play to a 3-act movie. And, when you talk about words fail and how important that was to the 3rd act, and the orchard as really the whole secret surprise ending was really, it just, I find it, I wouldn't say unfathomable, but just so wonderful in a sense that you work through all these things and you seem to really make all the right choices, Maybe it was because everybody was so engrossed in it, and obviously everyone's talented and experienced, but it just, seemed like the right thing to do, even though in some cases, as we know, when there's adaptations, people go, why did you have to change that? I thought they were all going to get married and live happily ever after. Could you talk about the 2nd act to the 3rd act and literally the end of the movie?
Well, I knew that, that was one of the biggest challenges, turning a 2-act musical into a 3-act movie. Luckily, as I talked about, the only thing that when I came in, my very first meeting with the entire team, but the only note I brought with me, I had a lot of ideas, but the only note was like, I was like, I just felt that he should confess. And it was actually came from a very practical thing. I just had my 30th high school reunion or something like that. Can't quite remember, or it was coming up, and I was like, I always thought it was beautiful that the family did not expose Evan. I thought that was very classy and very forgiving and really lovely of them. But I kept thinking about Evan. I'm kind of an empath, and kept thinking about God, at his 10th high school reunion, is he still pretending to be Connor's friend? And it obsessed me. I was like, God, what a terrible burden that would be. And because Steven Levenson wrote that beautiful speech about, no hiding, no lying, you're you and that's enough, I thought, well, then he has to not lie. I mean, it has to be done forever, publicly. And so that was my note. I didn't write it, but Steven Levenson wrote a beautiful thing. And then Ben had this wonderful, originally it was all typing, and Ben, being a very smart actor, said, hey, what if I recorded myself doing it? And I thought that the confession plus, let's go search for the real Connor, I don't know. It's just, again, what was so exciting, and this is the thing about musicals, more than any other movie I've ever made, because usually I'm also at least a co-writer on a movie if I'm directing it, is the discussions are so exciting. We're always checking each other, and different ideas are coming. Like I said, I say, hey, he should confess somehow. Ooh, I have an idea. What if we search for this? And then Benj Pasek, hey, wait a minute. Then what if Connor's on? Yes, and then Ben comes in and says, well, we shouldn't type it. I should say it, I should hold up the thing and post it. And all these things, they just lead to each other. It's very exciting. I don't know what your thought about it, or your memory of it was.
Basically that. It was just that I loved when I first read this Steven's adaptation, Steven Levenson's, I loved all of the changes that had been made. As you said, somehow it was all the right choices. I think the songs that I assumed wouldn't be there weren't there, and the songs that were new weren't necessarily things I expected, but as soon as I saw them, I was like, that was exactly what was needed. And I think, much like everyone else, there's something very special about that 3rd act, about seeing Evan actually repent and try to heal and try to find forgiveness. And particularly right now in a time that's sort of riddled with cancel culture and people taking one idea or one fact or one quote or one something, and just there's such a lack of forgiveness and a lack of nuance and a lack of gray area. And so to see a young person do something wrong, do something that is bad, which every young person in the world, I know I did when I was a young person, I'm sure that all of us have as human beings, to see that person then learn how to forgive himself and also take daily small steps, as the song says, just a little bit closer each day. It doesn't have to be this big 360 rehabilitation redemption. It's just moving forward and not backward. And so I think there's something really powerful about that. And as Steven said, I think I saw it written in the script as another letter that he would write and post, which was the way he was going to confess. And as beautiful as that device was, I thought there was something a little bit more visceral and a little bit braver and more courageous about somebody who has been so hidden his whole life and who's been so afraid to show himself in a literal and a figurative sense to really front-facing camera for the first time just completely admit in person out loud what he'd done and sort of cancel himself online. So I think that ended up being a very powerful kind of push into that final stage of the movie.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, there's the planning that goes into it. Then there's the moment. We're on set, and we do a take, and then we do another take, and we do another take. We're just like playing with it. I'm not looking for like the take. What I'm looking to do is like, what if, that kind of, like, little by little, and best idea wins. But I remember saying, because in the original production, the stage production, Larry's not a stepfather. That was a new idea that came for the movie, and so it was like, it was written to be like, we're in the confession talking about, like, don't hate the Murphy family or whatever. And I was like, they're actually the Murphy-Mora family, and that felt a little clunky. But I remember saying, what if you just said Connor's family? And then that was and then you added I'm sorry. There was like these little things that just happen. And it just, and then that's the magic take. It happens all the time. There's nothing like that. It's wonderful. And the thing is, those collaborations, it never stops. You're just always, it's like every day is a workshop. It's really, really exciting to do. And
the way you talk about it, how it just little by little gets more and more refined. Mm-hmm. So like even maybe the initial choices of Jared's character being different, or Connor certainly showing more humanity and throughout the whole film, or Alana in terms of her diversity and the fact that she too had similar problems, and then it gets refined even more and more. It just must be very exciting.
Well, it is. That's the one thing I felt that I was able to bring to it a little bit, not as a writer, but just I character. My background is a novelist. Character is kind of like my first thing, and to watch. When you get the right actors and the script is terrific, it's just you're digging. Like, sometimes it's a word. The tie scene between Amy and Ben, it's one of my favorite moments in the movie. It's so lovely. And I remember this one thing where people were talking about, Larry took him to Brooks Brothers, and she was so excited. He was so excited, and he got a shirt, a suit, and a tie. And then for one take, instead of a tie, it was this tie. And the minute you changed to this, it completely specified where Amy was going, and suddenly, that was the take. It's amazing. Sometimes it's one word, and then that's it, because it's suddenly real in this textured, nuanced, quiet, sometimes imperceptible way, And it was really fun for me as a director, and watch the actors feed off each other and be there for each other to find those moments, and that specificity was very, very exciting.
Well, speaking, of the cast, I guess if we didn't talk about your mom, we would be in the doghouse. So, how was it like working with Julianne Moore?
Just terrible. No, she's one of the greatest.
All right, next question.
One of the greatest screen actors alive. She's an absolute legendary presence, and so I think. What I expected her to be brilliant, as she was, and I expected that she would meet the challenge of singing head on and make it her own and make it honest and authentic and beautiful, and of course she did all those things. For me as an actor working with her, the most inspiring thing was how much joy and silliness and humanity and humility and eagerness and excitement she still has every day of work after having given us hundreds of amazing performances. I think I can only pray that if I ever were to last that long in my career, that I could still approach every day with the same amount of intention and happiness and just goofiness and she's such a real, grounded person with no pretense or facade or none of the kind of actory stuff that we all try not to have. She just doesn't have even a lick of it. She's just the most wonderful human being, and that's why all of her characters feel like such real, wonderful human beings, is because she is one. So it was fantastic, and we had like 2 weeks to do all of our stuff. It was a very contained little Heidi and Evan time. That was how the whole movie was kind of scheduled. We had like a Murphy family chunk, and then a Heidi chunk, and then a school chunk. And so she and I had to kind of get on a very comfortable level quite quickly and establish a long and intimate relationship very quickly, and that was made entirely possible by all the things I just said, by how open and sort of human she immediately was towards me, and I could only be so lucky to work with her more times.
Well, for me, it was quite evident the mutual respect for lack of another way to put it, the older actors and the younger actors. And I think everybody was benefited from that. And certainly speaking people who benefit, I think it's the audience, myself, and the people who got to see this film are the real beneficiaries. And I do hope that many people see it, old, of course, and young, of course, and it will make a difference. And it's exactly what we need right now. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much.
Thank you.